If a website ever asks you these questions, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Masha who heard that there's a new service that gives everyone free internet access, so she decided to use it, but this would lead to something horrifying for Masha and her family. After she connected to this internet service, a web page popped up asking her to register some information, but the questions were oddly personal. It asked, what's your usual mode of transportation? With a photo of a bus, a boat, a train, and a plane. Masha took her bike to school every day, so she clicked on the train instead. But the next day, the local news showed that there was a horrific train crash that killed everyone on board. Masha thought that this was a coincidence, but soon she'd realized that she made a deadly mistake. Later, she needed to use the internet again, so she logged back in. This time it asked, what kind of home do you live in? Along with 4 different pictures of different types of homes. She clicked apartment even though her and her family lived in a house. And the next day, the apartment building near her school burned down. The police suspected arson. Then she went back to the internet server one last time, but this time it showed a photo of her mother, father, sister, and herself with the question, who is your favorite family?
Okay, part 2 about the guy who pretended to be gay in high school to get closer to all the girls. So like I said, we all lift up our shirts, and because we were on FaceTime, we couldn't see if he screenshotted anything. And then the one night we were having a sleepover, and he was really upset that night because apparently the popular boys were making fun of him. Because the only reason why he was gay is because he couldn't get with any girls. So me and my friends thought of a solution, but like we were just trying to be nice. And now looking on it, that is the dumbest shit that we've ever done. And we're all like, oh, well, why don't you just say that you did the nasty with all of us? And he was like, well, I don't think they'll believe it, even if you guys said, yeah, you did do it. So we were like, okay, then let's do it for real. So that night, we did the nasty, all 5 of us. So that morning, we all wake up and he's literally gone. Like, he didn't wake us up to say goodbye, which wasn't normal. So the weekend goes past. Monday, we go to school. And in the morning, my friends and I have time to walk around and everybody's just staring at us like for part 3.
Here's a story time of how I got catfished by my best friend's dad. This story literally ends up taking a turn for the worse, so honestly, be prepared for that. So it was around 6th grade and I had just moved schools, and I put on my Snapchat story, swipe up to be friends, because I didn't really know anybody around me, so I kind of had no friends. So this one dude swipes up and he's like, hey, you're really cute, we should talk more. And I was like, aw, thanks, what'd you look like? He sends me a couple pictures of himself and he was so hot. So I was like, yes, let's talk more. So we start snapping so much that within a couple hours, he was #1 on my best friends list. He would never show his entire face. He would always show like his jawline and stuff like that. Or like pictures of his underwear. Literally all I ever got was jawline pics or underwear pics. I literally got so comfortable with this dude, I told him stuff that nobody else knew. I told him I loved him and that I was catching feelings. A couple days later, I stayed the night at my best friend's house. She had softball practice, so I stayed at the house with her dad. Once we get back to her house, after dropping her off at softball practice, he said he had a big surprise for me. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Here's part 2 on how I got catfished by my best friend's dad. Continuing on with the story, my dumb self didn't really think anything of it, so I followed him to his room. He closed the door behind me and he told me to be quiet. I was like, okay, what is this surprise that you have for me? He pulled out his phone and he showed me his Snapchat. And it was the Snap account that I have been snapping for the past couple of weeks. And the same guy that I confessed my love for. Mind you, I'm pretty sure her dad was in his mid-40s at the time. And I was only 12. He told me to give him my phone because I needed to be punished for my actions, so I did. I only did because I was honestly terrified and I had no idea what else to do. He told me since I told him I loved him, I needed to show him that I loved him. And he starts to take his pants off. I turn around and I run out the room and out the house. My house was only a couple houses down, so I ran all the way down to my house and told my mom everything that happened. I don't know if she really believed me, but he ended up convincing us not to press any charges against him. And I was never allowed to see my best friend nor him ever again. P.S. I never got my phone back and we had to move again.
Story time on how I got caught sleeping with my teacher. A little backstory. I'm not the brightest girl. I was really struggling in middle school. I was the type that would ditch class, not go to school, and the days that I did go to school, I would always say that I was sick so the nurse would send me home. Well, my mom and dad caught on and they would make me go to school even if I was sick, because they didn't know if I was fake sick or if I was really sick. Well, it was almost the end of school year, and like I said, my grades were really, really low. Well, there was this one teacher that told me if I didn't pass that class, I would be repeating that grade. And obviously I didn't want that because I wanted to be with my friends. So I ended up asking that person how I could make it up to them. And at first that person said that they didn't know because it was too late. Well, whatever. A week after that, I received a text message. And it's an unknown number. Well, the text message said, hey, it's blank. Remember when you asked me how you could get your grades up? Well, I already know how you can do that, but let's talk in person. Obviously, I agreed to it. They gave me a place and a time to meet up. Running out of time, follow me for part 2. I got caught sleeping with my teacher part 2. So my school had this like abandoned basement, and that's where we were supposed to meet after lunch. So yes, I had to skip class. It was a little sketchy for me, but honestly at this point, I was ready to do anything. Well, the day comes, we meet, and that person tells me what I need to do in order to get my grades up. When that person told me that, my heart dropped. I honestly thought they were going to tell me to like clean their house or do their groceries or something, but not do the dirty with them. Well, after 20 minutes of trying to convince me, I said yes. We weren't able to do it right there and then, but we did set up a time that same day after school. While I leave, I tell my friends what that person wants me to do. They asked me if I was going to do it, and I said yes. There's so many details to this story, but long story short, mid doing the dirty, the principal busted us. He got fired, ended up going to jail. I was in big trouble, but I did explain what happened and that he told me what I had to do to get my grades up. My parents were very disappointed. I wasn't allowed to go back to school, so I got homeschooled.
This is why I don't tell anyone where I live. There was once a boy who asked his single father for a bedtime story, so the father told him. There was once a boy named Colby who made friends with another boy online called Helper23. On Colby's birthday, Helper23 wanted to give him a present in real life, so Colby gave him his home address, where he lives with his mom, his dad, and his little brother. But then Colby started to feel a bit weird about giving his address to a stranger online. The next night, he thought he had to tell his parents about it. He called out to his dad but got no reply, then found both his parents killed and a man wearing a dark hoodie holding a knife in the hallway. As Colby started to beg for his life, he hears his little brother crying in the next room. The intruder then strangles Colby and leaves the house with Colby's baby brother. The boy then looks up at his father and asks, "Why did the intruder take the baby?" To which his father just calmly smiled and said, "I've always wanted to be a father."
Storytime of how I found out that my mom was putting our dad's ashes in our food. Yep, our mom would put our dead dad's ashes in our dinner. So basically, after my dad died, my mom showed zero emotion. It's like she really didn't care at all. Like she kind of wanted it to happen. His death was like an unsolved case, and nobody knows how he actually died. And now that I get to think about it, it might have been my mom, but I don't want to jump to conclusions. And if it was her and she sees this video, I don't want to end up like him. Anyways, back to the story. So about a month after he died, she would always post a picture of me and my brother's dinner with the caption, "You'll always be with them." Literally every single night. And honestly, nobody really caught on. All the comments were like, we're praying, this and that. Until one day I was just sitting on the couch and I look over and my mom was pouring something into the mashed potatoes. So I go a little closer and I see her pouring the ashes of my dad into our mashed potatoes. Listen, this story only gets 10 times worse, so like for a part 2.
This is why you should never talk to strangers. According to Japanese legend, Kuchisake Onna was once a beautiful woman who cheated on her husband. When her husband found out about it, he became full of rage and sliced the corners of her mouth from ear to ear. After she died, she came back as a vengeful spirit who covers her scars with a surgical mask, so she looks entirely normal otherwise. She usually wanders the streets at night with a large pair of scissors or a knife. If you're unlucky enough to be chosen as her victim, she will ask you, "Am I pretty?" If you answer no, she will cut you in half. If you say yes, she will cut your mouth from ear to ear just like her too. But you can survive her by answering her question with something else, like, maybe, I don't know, am I pretty? You can also buy some time by throwing money or hard candies at her, which she will stop to pick up. But others say that if she's chosen you, she will show up to your bedroom and kill you in your sleep. So remember, especially since everyone is wearing a mask nowadays, be careful who you talk to.
Storytime, the biggest lie I ever got away with as a teenager. So my sister and I were going to spend the weekend at my stepdad's, and I asked my parents if I could bring a friend. My dad said he didn't care, and my stepmom said no. And my parents were really strict. But obviously I did not listen. So I invited my friend, and her parents were also really strict. So we came up with this elaborate plan that I would ask her parents and tell them that it was a surprise for her. And they believed it. So the day comes whenever we're supposed to leave to go up to my stepdad's. So, we get off the bus, walk to my house, and my stepmom was asleep because she worked night shifts. So I was able to sneak my friend through the house to my bedroom. Little did she know she was going to have to hide in the closet. So my stepmom came in and needed to borrow a pair of socks for work. And I was literally guarding the closet with my life. And she goes, "Get away from the closet, you're acting so suspicious. What's in there?" Like for part 2, by the way, Stacey and Candace, if you see this, my bad. Part 2 about the guy who was obsessed with me. So like I said, as soon as I got dropped off, his friend Ella texted me. And she was like, oh, it was so wrong for you to say that he couldn't get it up and a bunch of other nonsense. And I just brushed it off and I was like, whatever. So I went to sleep, and the next morning then I woke up. So my house had like a gate to get in and there were locks on it and all the locks were broke. And my stepdad also saw that he slashed my fucking tires. I ended up telling him everything that happened that night, and my stepdad's 32 and Ryan's 22. So they're only a 10-year difference. He basically gave me an option. He was like, either I can call the cops or I can go beat this kid's ass. I was like, okay, just call the cops. So we called the cops, and they ended up catching him on the surveillance camera, like of him breaking the locks and slashing my tires and everything like that. So then they found him and arrested him. And let me get this straight. If he just wouldn't have lied about it, then it would have never came out that like he couldn't get it up. He just had to go and tell everybody that we fucked.
Story time about the guy who was obsessed with me. We're gonna call him Ryan. Well, Ryan had a crush on me for a long time. And one night, one of our friends asked me to go to a party with them. And Ryan was gonna be the DD. And everything was good. We were all having a great time at the party. Well, Ryan and I went off to one of the bathrooms. And we started making out. And while we're making out, he goes, I really want to fuck you, but I can't. And I'm just like, why? And he said it was because he couldn't get it up. And obviously he was embarrassed about it, which is understandable. So I left the bathroom and didn't plan on telling anybody about it. Until I walk over to a group of my guy friends, and they're telling me that apparently Ryan told everybody that we fucked. So at that point, I didn't give a fuck, and I told them what actually happened. AKA that he couldn't get hard. And apparently he was mad at me after that, but I had no idea. So he said, do you still want me to take you home? So I said, yeah. And now that he drove me home, he knew where I lived. And then I got a text from one of his friends, like for
Part 2 of how my mom was putting my dad's ashes in me and my brother's dinner. Continuing on with the story, after I see her literally pouring my dad's ashes into our mashed potatoes, and I mean, this lady literally sees me staring at her pouring the ashes into our mashed potatoes, and she like doesn't even say anything. I was just, a little shocked. So after that, I just kept quiet until after dinner. And I was mad at my brother that night, so I just let him eat the mashed potatoes. So after dinner, I went up to my mom and asked her why she was putting our dad's ashes in our food. And her exact words were, your father was a bad man. He wasn't meant to be here. I said, what does that have to do with you putting his ashes in our dinner? She goes, it will just cleanse your soul. The witches told me to feed my children's father to them. Bishwa? I ended up telling my brother, but then me and him decided not to ever say anything ever again because we don't want her little spirits telling them to do the same thing with us, so...
This is why you should always trust your gut. Sabrina was about to head to college, but she had one big insecurity, her glasses. So she felt really excited when she finally scheduled her LASIK surgery. During her initial consultation with her doctor, though, she noticed some strange behaviors. He'd always scratch the top of his hairline, sometimes every few minutes. She also caught him trying to write with the cap of his pen still on and looking confused about why no ink was coming out. But she just brushed it off. She was excited to never wear glasses again, so she decided to go ahead with it. During surgery, she felt a dash of darkness. She felt something pull on her eye. It wasn't painful due to the numbing drops that she'd used, but she could still feel it. She thought this must be normal. Until a few weeks later, she woke up and her eyes were bloodshot. She went into her bathroom and saw that she had a huge lump under her eye. She tried to blink, but she couldn't close her eyes all the way. And as Sabrina leaned closer to the mirror to try and touch it, she saw in her own reflection something alive was moving inside.
So yesterday, me and my wife were just chilling on the couch, and all of a sudden I get a text message from my neighbor John. So I opened the text message, and it was so disgusting, I wrote it down so I can read it to you guys. This is what it said. Hey Andreas, it's your neighbor John, and I've been feeling so guilty lately that I haven't been able to sleep, and I think it's time to confess. I've been helping myself to your wife when you're at work, probably more than you do. It's so incredible and so fun, and I haven't been able to contain myself. Sometimes it goes on for hours. I know it's no excuse, but I don't get any at my house. Anyway, I apologize and it won't happen again. So I read the message to my wife and I look at her and I go, you are a disgusting, cheating tramp. I never want to see you again in my life. I want a divorce, and you are nasty, you are grimy, you are disgusting. I don't want to see you again. So right before my wife went to speak, I get another text message from John. So I open the message, it says, shit, I really hate autocorrect. I meant to say Wi-Fi.
Story time about my extremely toxic boyfriend. So when I was in high school, I was dating this boy for 3 months. We're gonna call him Nick. And my friends hated him because he was super mean to all of them, but he was super nice to me. Well, after dating for about a month, he started acting super weird. Like, he stopped paying attention to me, he didn't want to hang out with me. And I was going through a depression this time because my dad had just died. I wasn't really doing my makeup anymore, I wouldn't do my hair anymore, and I started gaining a little bit of weight because all I would do is sleep in bed all the time, eat 24/7. Well, soon our 2 months was coming up, and he wanted to go to this party. So I literally begged him to FaceTime me, and I was asking him, oh, what should I wear? So I put on this dress that was really tight-fitting, which I was already super uncomfortable about wearing because of the fact that I had a little bit of a belly now. So he picks me up, we go to this party, and I go and I start hanging out with a few of my friends. Well, one of my friends comes over and shows me something that he posted on his private story, like for part 2.
Story of the time a police officer pulled me over just to flirt with me. So when I first got my license, I would always go to Wawa in the middle of the night. Usually I would pick up my friend and we would go together. But this night she was busy and I was hungry, so I just went by myself. So I pull up to Wawa and right after I got there, I see a police officer pull up. I didn't think anything of it. So I went inside, ordered my food, and while I was waiting in line to pay, I see the police officer walk in. He was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, really tall and muscular and had blonde hair and blue eyes. Just an overall attractive guy. Right when he walked in, we made eye contact. At the time, I was 17, so I wasn't thinking like, ooh, arrest me, officer. I'm just kidding. But whatever, I pay for my food, go to my car. Then the cop comes out a few minutes after me, and he looks at me while I'm getting in my car. And I was really hungry and not trying to wait to eat, so I watched YouTube on my phone and ate my food in my car. So I finished eating and start heading home. Mind you, there was nothing wrong with my car. I didn't have tints, all my lights were working, and all of a sudden I see cop lights behind my car. So I pull over, and it's lo and behold the cop from Wawa. Like for part 2.
Welcome to another part of Disturbing Myths You Didn't Know About. Once a young man heard a knock on his door. He opened it to find a distressed young woman who said she ran away from her abusive husband. He thought she was harmless, so he let her in his house. The next morning, the young man was on his daily walk when a priest came up to him and said that he was in danger. Feeling suspicious, he cut his walk off short and went home. As he approached his bedroom, he saw a demon with chalk white skin and white hair adding the final touches onto a sheet of painted skin spread on his bed. He hid behind the door, trying not to be seen. Then he saw her pulling the skin over her head and transform into the young woman. The young man went back to the priest, but he couldn't save him. One night, the demon snuck up on him and ate his heart before disappearing into the night. The fox demon from ancient Chinese mythology is a demon who disguises herself as a beautiful young woman. She lures men with her looks and powers of persuasion, then eats their hearts and livers to nourish her human disguise, which she has to paint her human features onto. Make sure to follow for the next part of Disturbing Myths.
This is my strangest encounter with a nail client story. So when I first started doing nails, I didn't have a lot of clients. I decided to run a promotion where you would get $15 off your first set of nails. And I was only charging between $35 and $55 to begin with, so it was already cheap. I would only take one nail client a day just because I had school and I would take a lot of hours to do nails. A girl messaged me and had made an appointment for 4 o'clock. So I had my friends from school come over and wait with me there until the girl came just to make sure that she wasn't, a serial killer. So 4:30 comes along, she says she's running late, 5:30, 6:30, 7:30. Finally, 8 o'clock, she texts me and says that she's outside. She smelled like a mixture of BO and marijuana. I finished doing her nails around 12 o'clock at night just to find out that she didn't even text her ride to come yet and she lived an hour away. I told her it was fine and she can make herself comfortable while she waits. She proceeds to lay in my bed.
Do you know the dark origins behind the fairy tales we all grew up hearing? In this series, I'm gonna draw each fairy tale and tell you the original scary stories they were based on. First, we have the Grimm's version of Snow White. Now, we all know how the story begins. The evil queen was jealous of Snow White's beauty, so she banished her into the woods. But the evil queen actually wanted to eat Snow White's liver and lungs with salt and pepper. The huntsman spared her and gave a boar's liver and lungs to the queen, which she eats. But the darkest part, which you might not know about, is how Snow White actually got revenge. Snow White and the prince got married and they invited the evil queen, or should I say tricked the evil queen into attending because they knew that she'd feel jealous enough to do it. And the evil queen actually fell for it. She arrived at Snow White and the prince's wedding only to find out that they put a pair of iron shoes into burning coals until it heated up and glowed bright red. Then they placed it in front of the evil queen and made her wear those shoes until she danced to her death. Which definitely is not the same ending that I remember growing up hearing about. So let me know which fairy tale you want me to cover next and follow if you want to see the rest of the series.
Welcome back to another toxic best friend story time. A little background information. I was friends with this girl since elementary school, and we had a really good friendship until we got into high school. Like, we always got along, never fought over boys. Well, during our freshman year, this new boy started at our school. Well, I started talking to him. And after a month of still talking to him, my best friend goes, "I don't think you should talk to him. He talks to a lot of girls." And because she was my best friend, I didn't think she would lie about that. I believed her and I stopped talking to him. Well, that weekend, I went over her house. And when I walked in her room, she goes, "Oh, say hi." And who else is on the phone but the boy she told me not to talk to? So after they got off the phone, I was like, "Let me guess, you told me to stop talking to him because you liked him." And she goes, "Yeah, I just knew that if I told you I liked him, you wouldn't stop talking to him." So that night, we went to a party and he was there. And things started to go south, like for part 2. Part 2 about my extremely toxic boyfriend. So like I said, one of my friends comes over and shows me something that he posted on his private story. It was literally a screen recording of me trying to get the dress on that was super tight fitting. And then a screenshot of my face after when I had the dress on. Because obviously I was upset that it didn't fit the way it did before. And the video said, "Imagine having a girlfriend that was fat as hell. Ew, I have one." Then the picture of me said, "Ew, she's sad now, like what the fuck, go to the gym and lose some weight." On his private story, which had one of my friends, and she was super pretty, and apparently he tried getting with her. That's a whole nother story. So after that, I Ubered home from the party, and as soon as I got home, I started crying, and I told my older brother about it. So he literally drove us back to the party and beat the absolute shit out of my boyfriend. Well, someone called the cops, my brother spent a night in jail, and my boyfriend got an underage. And my brother won't talk to me now because I'm back with my boyfriend.
Do you know someone who idolizes a famous person a little bit too much? For Sophie, her obsession with her favorite celebrity led to something truly terrifying. Sophie loved everything about her favorite celebrity, who for now we'll just call Mindy. She especially loved Mindy's looks. She would buy the same clothes, get the same hairstyle, and buy the same jewelry. She did everything to look exactly like her. So one day, Sophie saw from Mindy's Instagram that she was about to go to this restaurant. So Sophie showed up at that restaurant first and waited until Mindy came. She'd wanted to get plastic surgery for a while, and she thought, what better than to get a real-life reference photo for my doctor? Soon, Mindy came in, sat down, and ordered. Sophie tried to compose herself, but when Sophie saw that Mindy got up to go to the bathroom, she followed. Then she pretended to be someone that Mindy met at an event and probably forgot about, so she wouldn't seem like just another fan. Then she leaned in and asked to take a photo together. The next day, she walked into her doctor's office with the reference in hand and said, "Here's exactly what I want to look like," and demanded the face be sewn into her. This is why you should never deliver a letter in person. Once a woman was living in Berlin after World War II. Supplies were tight, money was short, and everyone was hungry. But one day the woman was walking through a crowd when she accidentally bumped into a blind man. They started to talk. The man eventually asked her for a favor, to deliver a letter for him to an address written on the envelope. She agreed. She was about to go deliver this letter when she turned around and saw the blind man running away without his cane. She felt suspicious of this behavior, so she went to the police. The police then decided to visit the address written on the envelope to see if they could find anything. Then they made a shocking discovery. They ended up arresting 3 butchers who had been harvesting human flesh and selling it to the starving people. Then they opened up the envelope to see what was written inside, and it only said one line: "This is the last one I'm sending you today."
I'm 21 years old and my parents are divorced. My dad cheated on my mom when I was 10 and left us to marry his coworker, Kay. In the weeks following the incident, my pregnant mother ended up miscarrying from all the stress. Kay married my dad and gave birth to my half-sister S. I remember I always hated going to my dad's place. I remember being miserable whenever I was around them. I never had a bond with S and never considered her to be my sister. Anyways, I visited my dad until I was 15 and then moved to another country with my mom where she met P. P was an amazing guy who made my mother smile again. They ended up getting married and my mom gave birth to my twin brothers. When I moved to a new country, I cut off all contact with my dad. I was supposed to visit them every Christmas, but after my brothers were born, I felt like I finally had a real family and I chose to spend my holidays with my mom, P, and little brothers. Well, last year, S was diagnosed with advanced leukemia. I did feel sorry for her, but I was not in any way affected by the news. She finally passed away on the morning of my 21st birthday. Call me heartless, but for me, it was like some neighborhood kid getting sick. I felt guilty about my feelings because I'm very protective towards my brothers, and the mere thought of any harm coming to them makes me anxious. Now for my 21st.
This is a story of the time that I caught my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So I don't know about you guys, but every single Wednesday in my middle school, we would have a bagel sale. And some people's parents would come in to help out. And my neighbor's mom was one of those parents. And I had a best friend at the time whose mom would also work at the bagel sales. But this best friend of mine, her mom never let us hang out with each other because she felt that I was a bad influence on her. When in reality, it was the complete opposite. She was the one that snuck the boys in her house, if you guys remember that story time, where they peed in a flower pot. So basically her mom wouldn't let us hang out. And sometimes my friend would go with her mom in the morning, basically as a ride to school, and to help out with the bagels too. And one day when she went in with her mom, my neighbor's mom also was there too. So my friend starts eavesdropping into their conversation, and my friend's mom brings me up and says how much of a bad kid I am and a bad influence. And my neighbor's mom was like, "Oh wow, that's my neighbor. Like, we always suspected something bad about her. Our whole entire neighborhood knows this about her." Basically making stuff up about me. So then I go home crying, tell my mom. Part 2 of catching my neighbor's mom talking smack about me. So my best friend tells me all these things that my neighbor was saying about me, obviously. And I got really upset, so I went home and I just started to cry. Because for some reason I felt like when I was younger, every one of my friends' parents hated me. And I never really knew why. I was always the type of person to let my friends do whatever they want and encourage them in doing whatever they want, whether that's breaking the rules or following the rules. So I mean, I guess that could be something, but I'm just being a supportive friend, sorry, I got off topic. So when I told my mom, she was like, "Okay, come with me, I'm gonna knock on her door." And I was like, heck no, I do not feel like dealing with this. Mom, you deal with it. So she calls her up on the phone, puts her on speakerphone, confronts her about the situation, and this lady starts going on about how she loves me like I'm her own child, saying that I was never a bad influence on her daughter, and that she actually wanted me to hang out with her daughter more. That's not what she was saying at Bagel Sale.
Storytime of how I figured out that my sister was trying to kill me. So me and my sister were best friends when we were little, but she was a very, very jealous person. So years and years go on, but her jealousy seems to start to grow. So I never really thought about it until I found out that she really wanted me dead. But throughout the years, she would do little things to get me hurt. For example, she pushed me off the top of our treehouse and I ended up breaking my arm. But every time I got hurt, my family would baby me and she would get even more mad. So at this time, we're about 16 years old, and I had to go in her room to get her laundry. And under her laundry, I found her diary, or journal, or whatever you call it. I was flipping through the pages, I found out some interesting and crazy things. Then one was named The Perfect Murder. What an original name. She had this big, huge dresser in her room. She went into a lot of detail about how she was gonna kill me, but it stated that she was gonna push the dresser on top of me and jump on it until I, and scream for help. I'm running out of time for part 2.
Do you know someone who had a crush that went too far? Jason only loved two things, butterflies and Angie. He wanted to ask her out for ages, but never had the courage to. He was always kind of a strange kid, with his obsession with butterflies and all. All his school supplies in his room were all decorated with butterflies. People at school didn't know much about him except that. Some rumors flew around every once in a while though. Some people even said that his mother had gifted him a butterfly resin before she passed away. Angie, however, never made fun of him. In fact, when Jason asked her on Halloween weekend if he could drive her to a costume party together, she thought it was charming, but things took a dark turn quickly. At first, the car ride was awkward, but not anything to be worried about. Then Angie looked at her phone and saw that they passed the address of the party. She said, "Hey, you're going the wrong way," but there was only a grin on Jason's face. The next day, police found both Angie and Jason. Jason was lying on the ground, cold, but above him, Angie was strung up on the ceiling, with two large pieces cut out from her back and opened up to look like wings. This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face.
Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with a 17-year-old girl. So when summer started, I started working at this new job. And I had a really good connection with one of my coworkers. And he was 28 years old. So we started talking, but I would get mad at him a lot because he would ignore my messages asking to hang out. And on top of that, every time that we got done with work, we would all go sit and eat, and he would sit next to this one girl. And by the way, she was 17. And I could see them flirting all the time. Well, finally, once summer ended, she moved away. And then I felt like I had a real chance to start dating him. So we started hanging out a lot and hooking up a lot. After a few months, I started taking our relationship serious. Well, apparently not for him, because there was this girl on his phone that he had been texting a lot. So weirdly enough, after that, I get a DM from the girl that he would always flirt with at work. And she asked me if I was dating him. And I said, yeah. And then she goes, oh, well, he's been texting me a lot. So then I blocked her and went and hooked up with one of his friends that night, like for part 2.
My girlfriend is so embarrassing, it's not even funny. So last week we were grocery shopping, and my girlfriend got caught stealing a can of plum tomatoes. Plum fucking tomatoes. So anyway, she got caught, and now she had to go to court today, so I came with her. On the way to court, she's crying at me, this and that, and I feel for her, but she's really scared. So in the courtroom, the judge asked my girlfriend, he goes, excuse me, ma'am, I understand that you stole a can of plum tomatoes. Now, how many plum tomatoes were in that can? So my girlfriend answered the judge, she says, 6, Your Honor. So the judge looks at her and goes, I'm going to sentence you to 1 night in jail for every plum tomato that you stole. My girlfriend turns to me and starts bawling her eyes out. And she's like, do something, please help me. So I look at the judge and say, Your Honor, she also stole a can of peas last week too.
Storytime of how I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2.5 years. His family loved me and my family loved him, and they expected us to get married. Well, last year when COVID started, we were actually in different countries, so we didn't see each other for 3 months. During those 3 months, we FaceTimed 4 times a day, and we were always texting. He happened to be quarantining in our hometown, so both of our families were in the same place. I was quarantined in a different country. One day my cousin calls me and tells me that she met a really nice guy on a dating website. I was so happy for her because she had had bad luck with guys. Every single week, her and I would catch up on the phone, and she would tell me how much she liked this guy, and how amazing their dates were, and how amazing he was in bed, how sweet and considerate he was. I couldn't be happier for her. Well, when I finally get back home, my boyfriend is super distant and cold. So naturally, I called my cousin and complained. She told me to give him space. She said I should just leave him alone. And so like an idiot, I did leave him alone. One day my cousin calls me and tells me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my boyfriend's car was parked in her garage. I thought it was just her nice way of trying to get us to talk. I walk in and catch them doing the dirty on the couch. Come back for part 2. So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue, though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my... Part 3. So my lying, cheating ex calls me and explains to me why he actually slept with my cousin. He said that he was so lonely and that he didn't know what to do, and that the closest thing to me he could find was my cousin. Right, as if that was any comfort to me. He said I should be grateful that I didn't cheat with someone else. I told him he had totally betrayed my trust and that I could never ever trust him again. And then he confessed that she was pregnant, and that his parents wanted them to get married. He said he just wanted to give me a heads up. Then he said that we could still be together, but just not tell anyone, so basically he wanted me to be his side piece. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like I didn't know this man. Guess what I did? I recorded the entire conversation. So I went straight to my cousin, and I let her listen to it. She was so shocked. She couldn't believe that he would offer to have me as a side chick. Well, I also let my uncle listen to it. He went to my ex's house and beat him up. Honestly, that made me sad, but he deserved it. They now have a baby, and he's gained 50 pounds. Trust your instincts, girl, and always record your conversations. Also, how cute are my nails?
Okay, so can we please talk about how McDonald's is responsible for one of the biggest conspiracies? Yes, McDonald's. It became a massive FBI investigation and involved one of the biggest Italian mob families in New York. Well, around 1987, there was a little bit of a decline in the fast food industry, and McDonald's was really feeling it, so they were like, oh my gosh, how can we improve our sales? And this is when they decided to partner with Simon Marketing. And they had some amazing business ideas. They helped them come up with the Happy Meal, and they helped them come out with the Monopoly game. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I used to play it a lot as a kid. You would get this little sticker that you could peel off on the back of drinks boxes. It would offer you a free Big Mac, a drink upgrade, but some of them offered way bigger prizes, like jet skis, cars, all the way up to $1 million. Yeah, I never found one of those. But you could always bring it back and add it to your Monopoly board. And anyone could participate even if you didn't buy anything from them. Like you could just go in and ask for a chip or else it would have been considered gambling. McDonald's sales jumped 40%, so they were making bank. But it didn't take long for someone to tip off the FBI.